The council meeting will please come to order. If you'd rise and give your attention to Councilman Schmidt for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
First, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody, and I would ask that we would take a moment of silence to reflect on the decisions that will be made here tonight. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no proclamations. We do have a presentation. Mr. City Manager, if you want to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to, Carl, are you the only one speaking? Or Judy? Or, I'm sorry, Susan. I'm going to ask Susan Duffy to step forward and make a presentation regarding the Topeka Metropolitan Transit Authority Bike Share Program.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Hello.
much, and
Okay.
good evening, everyone. We are so pleased
I'm going to have to ask you to step to the mic because that is the way we record.
transmit
Yes, thank you.
to everybody out there in TV
Yes.
land. Hi, I'm Susan Duffy, Executive Director of Topeka Metro, and this is Carl Fundenberger, our Bike Operations Director, and we are thrilled to bring you today the new bike share bikes that we will be putting on the streets beginning April 15th. And Carl, do you want to talk a little bit about our bikes? We have about 2 minutes.
Sure. So we just got our shipment yesterday of 100 bright red bicycles, as you can see. They're built to last, they're very sturdy, and they're actually a more advanced version of bike share bicycles than most cities that have bike share have. These are smart bikes. They have GPS, it's built in and it's always on, so we'll always know where every single bike is. And they have a drive shaft instead of a chain. So there's no chain to brake, no chain to get grease on your pants. They're great bikes. You know, it's something that happens in big cities, New York, Chicago, Denver. Why not here in Topeka?
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, and you too can be riding one of these beautiful bikes April 15th. Go out to our website, you'll see a link, sign up now. It's so easy to be a member. Costs just $25 for 1 year, and you get 2 hours of riding pleasurable time every day. Carl, is there anything more?
April 15th at Washburn University, 11 a.m. is our kickoff. Everyone's invited. We'll be doing an open house and a bike demo. And at 1 o'clock, kickstands up. We'll be doing a bike ride to the library. Please join.
Please bring your helmet.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we'll give that a great performance. Completes the presentations. We'll proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Brown. Here. Ortiz. Here. Everhart. Here. De La Isla.
Here.
Manspeaker.
Here.
Schwartz. Here. Schmidt.
Here.
And Harmon.
That is the roll call, and we have a couple of additions to the agenda this evening. I call on Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add an item to the consent agenda. It would be 4C, and it is a resolution granting a noise exception for Moto and Noto. And I would also like to add another resolution under action items, it would be 5H, which is a resolution authorizing alcohol.
All right. I think those have to be in separate motions.
I'm sorry.
So you'll move the
I'm
first
moving,
one
I'm
is
moving
for the
4C at this time, thank you.
the noise prohibition item, and Councilwoman Del Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 yes, the item is added to the agenda. And then the second resolution?
Yes, the second resolution, which would be 5H, is also in regards to Moto and Noto. It has to do with consumption of alcohol and would be item 5H.
Okay.
I would move to have it added.
Councilmember Brown has moved and Councilwoman DeLisla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. And Councilwoman Hiller, you want to vote on the item?
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the item is approved. Do you want to comment on the, we have a comment on the minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In looking at the minutes, I'm not sure if we need to amend them or I just had a question. I noted that it had Councilman Harmon listed as absent, and I think he came in late.
He did it. It should be towards the end. It states that he entered the room.
Okay,
So we can,
so it's counted as present.
yes.
Okay, very
Okay.
good.
Just wanted to
That
make
takes-
sure.
Take
Yes.
care of that, take care of that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I believe then there are no other deletions. However, we do have 2 executive sessions at the conclusion of the meeting. So we'll go with the consent agenda if the clerk would read.
A, are minutes of the regular meeting of March 10, 2015. There was a large list of open after midnight applications. Those are renewal for 2015. Staff is requesting approval. And then there was a resolution added as item 4C. It's a resolution introduced by Councilmember TJ Brown granting Jonna Rupnicki an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions.
Thank you. That is the consent agenda, at your pleasure. Councilman Brown moves to approve. Deputy Mayor Everhart seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved as read. We proceed to the action items. The first is an ordinance on record fees.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson concerning fees and procedures for record requests amending City of Topeka Code Sections 220-090, 220-110, 220-120, and 1010-050, and specifically repealing said original sections.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Approval would increase the fees for accident reports from the police department and allow fees pursuant to the Kansas Open Records Act to be set administratively. I will comment that Councilmember Hiller has had a conversation pertaining to pulling this and sending it to committee. Staff has no objection to that happening if that action is requested.
Okay. And also to note, this was deferred from an earlier meeting at which the legal department provided some additional information, statistics on the background of this. Councilman Hiller?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There has been a variety of feedbacks since we discussed it on the 17th. The chief has sent out a report, but has since had some thoughts about whether we could even drop the extra fees in terms of the department staff handling them. There are questions on some of the others, so I would recommend, I would move that we refer this to committee. Apparently, I should name a committee. There's been some interest in it being committee of the whole. I think I would name the Policy and Finance Committee and suggest that anybody who wanted to attend could come.
All right. She is, Councilman Hiller's moved to refer this item to the
Policy and Finance.
Policy and Finance Committee. Councilman Brown seconds the discussion. Councilman Manspeaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would only encourage that the meeting be set up after the new city council members are instituted.
Sure.
Because
Okay.
it seems wasteful to have me
think it
sit
would
in
be.
on a policy and finance committee and have absolutely no vote after this evening.
Right, that
Thank
would be,
you.
that's a good point, fine point. Other discussion on the referral to a committee?
You've got it.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I would support that. I talked to the police chief, and I think some of my concerns were how they used to do things, and they've changed things, and I don't know if we all recognize that they have changed it, and it's not how they used to do it. And so just to make sure that everybody has a clear understanding on how this is being handled in a different way, starting in 2010. I wasn't aware of the change, and that's why I had several questions, so I would support this. Thank you.
Thank you for the discussion. We do have a person signed up to speak on the matter. I want to give them the opportunity. Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.
Well, if they're going to send it to committee, I don't need to speak.
Okay, all right, thank you. And the discussion? All those in favor of the referral to a committee then, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the item is referred to the Policy and Finance Committee. Item B is the resolution on the capital improvement plan.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Jim Colson authorizing and adopting the 2016 to 2020 capital improvement plan and the 2016 to 2018 capital improvement budget and approving the project budgets attached.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Approval would adopt the 5-year capital improvement plan, the CIP, and the 3-year capital improvement budget, the CIB, and the project budgets that are identified in the CIB. Mr. Whitaker and team presented some information last week pertaining to this. At this point, I would ask Mr. Whitaker to step forward to provide a review of that information and to answer any questions that you may have as a body.
Okay, Mr. Whitaker.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. As presented last week, we presented the CIP budget and went over several of the projects. I guess I would open it for really that we're, presenting and recommending, for approval. And just take any questions that were related to any of the projects.
Councilwoman Schwartz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doug, the one thing that I don't think we really talked too much about was the unfunded project list. And if there was anything on there that you would move to the top if we figured out how to fund any of these projects, because there's several things on here. One example is Southwest Huntoon. This is on page 102. Southwest Executive Drive to Southwest Urish Road on Huntoon. And we travel that street a lot, and it's very narrow and very almost scary sometimes when you meet traffic on it. So can you just kind of go over the unfunded project list and how those projects moved into that and if they would be in any other budget process?
Okay. Councilmember Schwartz, basically what we were doing here is there were obviously other projects that we know should be identified as projects, and we wanted to keep them identified in the CIP. And so we listed, in reference to like the Huntoon, I would say there's another item going on with the traffic study with the Arvonia and I-470 interchange. Hopefully from that will then give us what do we really need to do in that corridor. And so that's why we would probably leave that on the unfunded list until we know better what's going on with the particular study and what we need to do to try to correct that situation over there for future development because that area. Other than that, others would be, I can ask Mr. Gerber if there's any, from the standpoint of the utilities that are unfunded, but I think, again, they were ones that we know we need to keep before on the list and don't lose track of them, but at this time we could move them to the unfunded and felt that's where they fell on the priority list.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions on projects? Seeing none. I have a couple comments, not on specific projects, and I couldn't be here last week when the discussion was held, and my comments are more on process. You can be seated.
Okay.
Than on actual projects. The first is, it's an item that I mentioned last year, and that is that I really think, I believe it would be helpful if we would have a copy of included in here a list of the capital improvement projects for the previous 2 years. In the past, we've always had that, and you can track where they are. 2 examples. For instance, we have the Fire Station 13 that we approved. The council took action to approve funding. We had a groundbreaking, and it hasn't occurred. So I know there are projects that generally we approve in a capital improvement budget, and then they go away or they aren't happening, and we don't have an update on them or where they are. The second item is when it shows fiscal year or 16, 17, 18, and 19, and it just shows them at that year. Some of these weren't on our capital improvement budget last year, so they are totally new to us that we haven't seen before. And it's hard, so which ones were on 2 years ago and now they're just coming up and they're part of a project. and how many are just on here, they're added for the first time, and we've never really had a presentation on them or anything. So I think for that, I request again that we have that concept, so we can really track over the years what ones are new, where they are, what drops off the list, and that we don't hear from again. The second item is, and I think the improvement of the capital improvement plan is one of the most important things the council does, perhaps second only to the budget. Because in here, we're talking about a total of $200 million over the 6 years, about usually $60, $70, $80 million a year in projects. And I think this, and we approve a project tonight, and in a sense, it's gone. It's on its way, and that's where it is. An example, I think, is the South Topeka Fire Station. Now, it was in the capital improvement budget last year. This year, we're going to start actual funding the early design work. And I don't believe we've ever had a major discussion in the council on its need, what it's doing, where it is, the location, et cetera. And I think that's important for the council to engage in, and also it gives the community an opportunity to participate, to hear, so that they're part of this. There are several other projects in here that have received substantial increases in funding from when they were on the list a year ago. Or there are new programs that weren't on the budget or weren't in the CIP last year. So they're almost like new policy. And to me, these are policy issues that I think deserve our attention, so that we have the time to make sure we're approving a policy, a new direction, substantial expenditure, so that a year from now, when it's questioned, it said, well, we approved it in the CIP or CIB. And we don't really discuss it again, because then we come back and we approve the actual expenditures, and we don't discuss that much because it's already been approved in the CIB. So I just think that these are issues that need the time, that we need to look at and just be aware of. That's just a background issue I feel is important as we review the capital improvement project. No other discussion. We do have people signed up for public comment. The first is Mike Caldwell.
I'm Mike Caldwell at Friends of the Call. We've been instrumental in working on the Kansas River to improve it as a recreational resource, and built nearly 20 new boat ramps in the last 10, 12 years. I want you to meet David Green. He's from the FTD group that started working with this project and with me. We in our committee and our constituents have been working for several years with the Riverfront Authority to make Topeka Dam safe for all people. And we wish to thank the mayor, city council, or city manager Jim Connors, and this city council for your diligent attention to this critical project. It will save lives, and it'll be an asset to Topeka.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is
Questions
one of
for
our
me?
capital improvement projects that is in the project tonight, in the list,
thank you.
yes. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Second item is David Green.
Well, folks, I'll keep this brief. My name is David Green. I'm one of the coordinators, as is Mike, with Fill the Topeka Dam project. We're just looking to improve public safety, and we're hoping that we can move forward with this project to prevent the loss of further lives in that area. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see a positive outlook.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Third person is Susan Duffy.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilman. Susan Duffy with Topeka Metro. And I would like to express our support for the increased amount in the CIP for infill sidewalks, increasing that amount to $500,000. And we appreciate the support of the city manager and the staff that's been working with us. Sidewalks are extremely important for our folks to get on the bus and not just disabled, but anybody pushing a stroller, walking, whatever. But with 37 new shelters, we really would like to get the folks to the shelters. So thank you very much, and we support the increase.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next is Joseph Ledbetter.
Governing body, Joseph Ledbetter. And last week I spoke about the need to widen California from 29th to 45th in a 5-lane increment. And we had a discussion Monday with the manager and Public Works and Planning, and we're still talking about how that can be best implemented. I think we are receiving some positive input. I appreciate that. But the letter I'm handing out is from a major developer in this city that I've known for years. He's a good friend of mine, Tom Peterson, and he's done developments not only out west where many developments have been done, but he's also done them east. And he's done them by Croco. He even had some property at Eastboro at one time. So he's not afraid to develop the east side. He told me if California was 5 lanes, which it is an arterial road, where it would there would be a lot of opportunity to develop commercial out there. He said also that the residential areas that are east of California, you could fill in. Certainly they could be in the city. We know that they're extending much larger water and sewer lines out there, so it makes sense to go ahead and get the right-of-way to the distance, to the width that you need for a 5-lane. Obviously, KTA, the Turnpike has to be talked to, and we have to work with them at some point, but these are in the future. I did do a Cora earlier in the week, or last few days, and found, as I already knew, that these projects were already in the 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2009, and then they took it out. So that's just an example of what can happen if people aren't diligent to make sure that there's follow-through on projects. I also support the sidewalks. The people of Highcrest West have told me they really like their sidewalks. That's probably the best project we've done so far, and a lot of kids use them. It's been good for that neighborhood. So, you know, when you add to that CIP budget the sidewalks, I think that's a good idea. And I think that pretty much covers. I was up here last week, so I don't need to be redundant. Appreciate that, and if you would really pay attention to that developer's letter. This is a man who has developed over 30 years in this city millions and millions of dollars worth of commercial properties, and he knows what you need to do to develop, and it's called infrastructure, and then let the private sector do the rest. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That concludes the public comment on the resolution. Is there any other discussion? What is your pleasure? Councilwoman Hiller?
I'm really excited about this plan, and I'm prepared to support it. I do, for the record, though, want to make a couple of notes today. I really do want us to look at other sources starting next year then for the sidewalks and for the city hall renovations. I think they're out there, and that would just relieve having to borrow for them. I have talked with the Bikeways Advisory Committee, and they are okay with the staggered funding as proposed here, and the staff came and shared with them a possible full 15-year run for that. I do still absolutely want to see no less than one street project per year in the new countywide half-cent sales tax. I'm nervous about putting it through with them as they are, but as long as we can all keep that in mind. when we work on the interlocal. That's what the voters voted for. And administratively for the future, I really support all of the comments that you made. And I'm concerned that we do need some sort of cancellation or sunsetting language in our resolution or otherwise, that, so that when we change our projects from year to year, if they go away, we actually cancel them. Because I think what we're doing right now is approving them open-ended for a 3-year period, and I'm concerned that we need to cancel them if we change our minds. So,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Those were just notes.
Comments for the record.
Recommendations.
Yes.
All right, for the record. Okay, thank you. Other comments? No. What is your pleasure?
I'll move to approve.
Oh, okay, Councilwoman Hiller moves to approve the resolution on capital improvement plan. Second. Councilwoman Schwartz seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes, Mr. Manspeaker voting no.
8 having voted yes, the capital improvement plan is approved, and that is a significant point that we have that underway. Item C is a follow-up to that on revenue bonds.
C is a resolution introduced by City Manager Jim Colson declaring the necessity to repair, alter, reconstruct, enlarge, or improve the city's water pollution, and/or stormwater utility system through improvement projects authorized by resolution, and providing notice of intention, authorizing the issuance of revenue bonds in the manner required by KSA 10-1201 at C.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With your permission, I'll ask Mr. Gerber to provide information and answer any questions on this item.
Mr. Gerber.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, thank you. I can address this item very briefly, I think. This is something we go through several times a year. Adopting this resolution simply announces the council's intent to move forward with the process of the issuance of revenue bonds. The action will come back to the council then later in the year, typically September, October, November timeframe, at which time we will have sold and marketed the bonds, and the council will be able to formally vote on them again.
And these are for enterprise fund projects only, correct?
Correct.
And this is, and where the state provides revenue bonds, where we do these, work these through the state, or we are allowed to do this for these particular types of bonds.
Yeah, statutes outline the procedures that we need to follow when we're doing these kinds of bonds.
And a question I had earlier was the fact that some of these projects are for 2018. The fact we're approving them in 2015, we're approving 2018 projects in 2015. You want to speak to that, please?
This is, I've looked into this a little bit, Mr. Mayor. It's fairly traditional from this body. It typically will issue the notice of intent for multi-year projects. In this particular case, these projects are in the CIB, so the 3 out years, and that gives us flexibility then to move forward with those projects and
Okay,
bonds.
thank you. Other questions, Mr. Gerber? Seeing none, your pleasure. Deputy Mayor
I would move for approval.
moves to approve. Councilman Schmidt seconds. Discussion. And this requires a 2/3 vote, statutory. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 10 yes.
Then having voted yes, the resolution on revenue bonds is approved. Go to item D, an ordinance on a zoning issue.
D is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at 2600 Northwest Topeka Boulevard from C4 Commercial District to I-1 Light Industrial District.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask Mr. Fyander to present information on this. Approval would allow a vacant 45,000 square foot warehouse to be sold for light industrial uses, which is consistent with the nature of the facility.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fyander.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. As stated, yes, this is the old Southwest Publishing warehouse or printing plant up at North Topeka Boulevard and Highway 24. As was said, this is really intended, the change of zoning is to get into a light industrial zoning to market it. It's a vacant facility right now. The area around it is consistent in terms of the industrial zoning with our land use and growth management plan. as you can see. The Planning Commission did recommend unanimous approval, and so did staff, so we would ask for a motion to approve the ordinance.
Thank you. And just another note, this is one of the facilities that was vacated by Southwest Publishing when they moved out to the Johnston's building. So it's a sign of progress, a change going on, but the important thing is they took over the Johnston's plant and filling it. They had several properties up there. Are there questions for Mr. Fyander? Your pleasure. Mr.
I'm glad Southwest Publishing has expanded, but I'd like to see the facility filled, so I would
It's in
move for
your
approval.
district, so you
Yes,
move
please.
approval. Ms. Del Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the ordinance zoning is passed. We go to item E on the street improvement project.
E is a petition, a project budget in the amount of $912,389, and a resolution of advisability and authorization introduced by City Manager Jim Colson, authorizing improvement project T 601048, which provides for street improvements in Miller's Reserve subdivision as more specifically described therein.
City Manager.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Mr. Whitaker to step forward and provide information on this item.
Mr. Whitaker.
Mr. Mayor, Council, let me bring just a map up here. This petition was submitted by the property owner, which is Mr. Rowland, for street improvement project in the Miller's Reserve subdivision, which is located out southwest of Southwest 21st and Indian Hills Road. This is a little difficult to see, but the plat is, you see the homes there at the top of the page, and right below it is kind of a vacant area. That is Phase 2 of Miller's Reserve. It's just he's adding another 23 lots in the subdivision. This petition is for, would provide paved streets, concrete curb and gutters, the storm sewer structures, piping and stormwater management, engineering and other contingencies for a complete street project. Just to know, the project budget is $912,389 and would be paid 100% by the owners of the property within the improvement district. Just as a note on this, the developer is currently constructing the sewer lines for the project at his expense, so that is not included within the petition. So he is basically paying for that himself. And so, and then staff recommends the council to approve the petition, so I can take any questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Whitaker? Councilman Chad, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When a private individual builds public sewer systems, is there a standard that's followed?
Yes, he is paying for that, but we are doing the inspection on that. We would not accept the sewers unless they meet our specifications, and we do the inspection on the project.
And so once we accept the sewers, the maintenance is now our responsibility?
Then would be our responsibility, and it would be part of our standard sanitary sewer, within the collection fees.
And so arguably also the roads that are being built for $9 million, which is paid through a special assessment, I assume, that also increases our overall operating costs in terms of maintenance, I would anticipate.
Yes, I mean, it would, again, it's designed per our standards, so it meets the city standards for streets and curb gutters, et cetera, and then we do the inspection on it to make sure that it is corrected or constructed per our inspection. But yes, it would add to the, it's additional maintenance that we would take on through the addition, though, of additional home sites that would go along with it.
I would just echo caution. We have 2 or 3 miles of road paved out south of Lake Sherwood that no houses are built on, that we maintain. We maintain the sewer. A promise and a prayer it was going to get paid for and homes were rebuilt and we'd have property tax brought into our community, but it didn't happen. So I'm not sure why we continue to expand our city, a dead horse I've beaten repeatedly from this body. I'm not sure why we continue to expand our city when we can't maintain the infrastructure that we currently possess. Why would we add to our overall bottom line? Thank you.
Okay, are there other questions? And it is, just to be clear, they are city streets then. I didn't know for sure, I mean, the type of subdivision this is, but they are city streets
Yes.
in the
they are.
subdivision?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Hiller.
If I could ask a couple questions. One, I'm sorry, my map printed pretty dark too, and I was having a hard time getting my bearings on it. Could you point out on the map what's 21st Street and what's Indian Hills?
Well, let me see if I can read mine to make sure.
I finally brought this one, but I didn't get a chance to ask you.
Maybe it didn't print out.
Nathan can help, I think.
Yeah.
I was just saying I can since it's my district. That top portion up there is the driving range at the top right corner, the Safari Golf driving range that sits at 21st and Indian Hills. So
Okay.
going from right to left, the top road there is 21st Street, and that's Indian Hills there.
So it would be in the southwest corner of that intersection.
And was the same developer the person who put together the subdivision that's already there in that big block?
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
And if I need to look past you to,
No, that's fine.
we got an email from someone, and I echo Chad's concerns. I just wanted to make sure we asked the question, was that development paid up and paid, you know, was it developed up as expected and the bonds therefore paid without the city having to carry them before?
I think you have someone approaching to help. So and you're asking about the northern half that's already done?
The
is that
northern
correct?
half, the
Yeah.
experience with that particular developer,
Right.
because we have agreed with developers to put the bonds out and have found
Yeah.
ourselves paying them, and
Okay.
I thought it was a worthwhile question
Yeah,
for the
Steve.
citizen to ask.
The Miller's Glen to the north there, the existing subdivision, those are private streets, so those were built at the developer's expense. Those are not maintained by the city.
Okay, but it was the same developer
Same
that's
developer.
now approaching us about basically filling in between these two.
Yes.
From your point of view as, from planning and what we've just passed,
Mm-hmm.
is this a reasonable priority development for us to partner in?
Yeah, this is something that went through I think it was last year where we looked at the annexation to bring it in, and having all of our services around the area that are there already, this would make us this compact. It doesn't extend this out where we're not.
So we did annex this?
We did annex. This is already in the city.
Okay, because
Yeah.
that's when I got
Is that
confused
what-
on my old
okay.
map as well. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that answers my question, because I thought Miller's Glen, they are private roads. The northern half, they are private roads. This is different. These are going to be city roads on the second, city streets in the second half. All right. Other questions? Council members, your pleasure. Councilman Schmidt moves to approve. Councilwoman Schwartz seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes, Mr. Manspeaker voting no.
9 having voted yes, the street improvement project is approved. We go to item F, a consent order with ADHE.
F is approval of proposed Kansas Department of Health and Environment consent order addressing reduction of combined sewer overflows, or CSOs.
City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very serious issue that has impacted the entire country and certainly has been an issue visited by several communities within the state. We have been working diligently with KDHE to address these issues. I'd like to ask Mr. Gerber to talk about the specific resolution that has been proposed between KDHE and the city, what it means to us as an organization, and the procedure to step forward.
Mr. Gerber.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, thank you. Indeed, last week we did hear a presentation about this from Mr. Sample, the superintendent of WPC, Water Pollution Control. You heard Mr. Sample talk that we had 880 miles of wastewater lines and 250 miles of storm sewer lines, and that we have a combined system of approximately 10% of our system. You heard that we have 6 permitted CSO sites, combined sewer overflow sites that are permitted by KDHE. You heard that those sites are numbered 3 through 8. We still don't have a good answer for that, but that is what it is. And you heard, as the city manager noted, that we recognize there's an issue, KDHE recognizes there's an issue, and you heard that we entered into mutually beneficial conversations with KDHE. And this is a really important distinction. I've been quoted as saying this is a good thing, and it is, because we entered into these conversations with KDHE willingly. We came to the table as partners, rather than coming to the table as some cities have done, not at all, and simply being given a decree by either their state organization or by the national EPA. So in Topeka's case, for example, a city just east of us, Kansas City, Missouri, is looking at potentially $2.5 billion because of their decree from the EPA. St. Louis is looking at twice that because of their decree from the EPA. We entered into a conversation with KDHE, and we're able to negotiate some things that we think makes it flexible for us, that makes it a living document, that allows us partway through the process to step back and evaluate what we've learned. You heard us talk last week that we have, we're getting ready to camera and look at the east side interceptor. Once we get that done, we'll have a much better idea of where we might be in this process. And this document that we're hopeful that you'll adopt allows us to do that very thing. It allows us some flexibility. It's a living document. And so for all those reasons, I think this is a good thing, and staff would request your approval of this item.
Questions, comments for Mr. Gerber? Mrs. Hiller?
Move to approve.
Mrs. Hiller moves to approve the consent order. Councilman Harmon seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 yes. Consent order is approved. That's good. That's a good step that we're taking, fine step, going forward. 6 is G, applications.
And there are
no applications, so we move to item 5H.
H is a resolution introduced by Councilmember T.J. Brown approving a special event known as the Moto and Noto Third Fridays.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move for approval of this resolution, which provides Moto and Noto, that event, to proceed with allowing alcohol sales in that area.
All right. Is there a second? Ms. Del Isla seconds. Discussion. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the resolution is approved. That completes our action items for this evening. We'll then proceed to the non-action items. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item is a discussion pertaining to the Topeka Levee Project Partnership. I'd like to ask Mr. Gerber to walk through this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerber.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask our wastewater engineer to come up, and she's going to help run the presentation for me.
And
For those-
and her name
Yes,
is?
for those of you who don't know, this is Michelle Nieswinder. She is the wastewater engineer
Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
Mr. City Manager. Thank you.
and deserves the lion's share of the credit for this project, helping to move this project forward. She and Mr. Sample have done a really great job with this. So with your permission, I'd like to proceed with this presentation. I want to give, similar to what we did last time, I'd like to give just a brief overview of our levee system. For those of you who don't know me very well, I have some pretty diverse music tastes. And this presentation is based on the best Led Zeppelin song from the best Led Zeppelin album called When the Levee Breaks. But we don't want the levee to break. We want the levee not to break. And so with that in mind, I'd just like to go through.
It looks like it's all uphill from here.
So just some brief history on this, the levee system itself. The system was federally built, but it is locally owned, operated, and maintained. So that's Kind of interesting. The recommended design that we'll talk about a little later on in the presentation should protect property inside the levee from an approximate 300-year event. There are 5 levee units. If you're like me, when you hear the idea of a levee, you kind of think maybe it's just a big concrete wall. So there is some of that, but it's mostly miles and miles of earthen berm. That's mostly what our levee consists of. There's numerous pump stations, and there's some flood control structures in the system. We can tie our local levee projects back to 1908. Kansas River flood of record, 1951, led to some additional work in 1954. And then some additional modifications of the system began in 1962 and were completed in 1974. What you have here is a map. It's way easier to see on the packet you have in front of you, but essentially it gives you a visual overview of what our levee system looks like and where the various 5 components of the levee are located. The other thing that I think is worth pointing out is at the top of your map, it's not noted on here because it's not our levee, but there is also a Shunga Creek levee, which we neither own nor control nor maintain, but certainly does have a direct impact on the citizens of North Topeka. And so I said Shunga, I meant Soldier Creek, yeah. Thank you. This map just demonstrates where the levee units are located and what some potential issues that we hope to remediate as part of this project are. As I said, there's a number of levee units. The first one we'll talk about very briefly is the waterworks unit, and that, as is noted, protects the water treatment plant, and it has some earthen levee as well as a concrete flood wall, and is designed to protect the water treatment plant. There is some work going on there right now. We're doing some relief wells, and relief wells, the theory is really the same as you for water as it is for, say, an oil relief well. It's just a place where if the pressure builds too much, it's allowed to blow so that it doesn't damage the levee, and then it can drain off safely to another spot. So we're doing 11 of those, I believe, right now at the water plant, and that work is ongoing. If you've been to the water plant recently, it's been chaotic and difficult to get to because of all the work going on there. Second area is the Auburndale unit. This unit will receive no work as part of this project. Interestingly enough, the northmost westbound lanes of I-70 that's where the levee is. It's essentially underneath the northmost westbound lanes. Third is the South Topeka unit, which you can visualize on your map where that is. Again, it contains some concrete flood wall and some 1.4 miles of earth levee, a number of pump stations, some relief wells, drainage structures, etc. Again, in this presentation, you can see when the original construction was and then when modifications took place to that particular area. The fourth one is the Oakland unit, which, as you might suspect from its name, helps protect the Oakland area of Topeka. And it's 10 miles of levee along the Kansas River and the Shunga Creek. It may be our longest levee.
Yes.
Yes.
North Topeka is.
Okay, second longest. I should ask Michelle before I speak on those things, I guess. And again, there's some visual representations of that particular levee. Then the longest levee itself, the North Topeka unit. Same kind of thing. I put total investment value of what the levee protects on there, just as kind of an information piece for the council, so you understand the significance of each of the pieces of the levee and how much property it protects in major flood events. And then finally, as mentioned previously, we have the Soldier Creek levee, which again is not owned or maintained by the city of Topeka, but it does serve as the northern barrier for much of all of North Topeka. And so that's just a point of reference for the council that is not part of this project, but it is a crucial piece of our levee system, of the levee system. This is meant to represent some of the potential issues that we believe may be happening with the levee system right now. At the very bottom of the levee is a layer of silt and clay that's supposed to be impermeable, but over time, geology happens, I guess, and it gets less impermeable. And so what can happen is during a flood event, it can push down and then push up into the levee and breach it, blow holes in it, et cetera. And so part of what will happen with the levee project, if it moves forward, is to address some of those issues in the various levee units. So that's just really a 5-minute overview of a really complex system that protects Topeka from flooding. In terms of the document before you tonight that we're discussing, it's called a Project Partnership Agreement. It is a legally binding agreement regarding cost sharing and execution of work between the city and the Army Corps of Engineers. As noted, it will include the reconstruction of specific assets associated with 4 of the 5 levee units. We're estimating the total project cost of $29.5 million. That will be roughly divided 65-35 between the city and the Corps. As you know, the city's been setting aside money for this project over the last number of years, and we anticipate increasing that set-aside amount next year. We've been doing $800,000. We anticipate increasing that to $1 million in subsequent budgets in 16, 17, and 18, so that we can reach the full funding amount and be able to maintain a cash share for our part of the project, potentially. So again, just in terms of a recap, this gets us work on the levee units that need work. It shouldn't raise or change the alignment of any of the existing structures. Provides a reduction of risk to $2.6 billion in infrastructure investment. There's a nice return on the investment for what we're putting in to what we're being able to protect with those dollars. We believe it has broad public and agency support, and there's no significant environmental impacts. So in terms of the next steps in this process, we're having the discussion tonight at this city council meeting. Provided there are no major concerns expressed by the council, the city manager will sign the contract, and then we'll submit that to the Corps. And then that'll, of course, keep the ball rolling, and then we'll have additional project meetings and additional planning, and then at some point in 2015, the project itself will actually begin. So I believe that's all I have on there. And with that in mind, I will stand for questions.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you. This is excellent, very good. I noticed in here, it said, like 62, 69. That's when it was built, or construction completed in 62. How do we check to see, how do I want to say, how do we check to see if we need to do something beforehand, or are we getting about there? Is that why we're kind of looking at this? Do we check the levee? Because 62, that's as old as me, that's old. So I was just,
Councilmember Ortiz, the Corps does periodic inspections of the levee. I think they do them at least every 5 years. This particular project, as you know, was started in about 2009 with the study, and they did a much more detailed analysis of what the needs of the particular units were. But it's also done on a routine basis to monitor how the levee's holding up.
okay, so we'll know if it's in worse shape than what it is. We know about how much time before we need to take that next step. Is that correct then? Is that what you're telling me?
I would answer that we believe we have a really good handle on what work is needed, but with any major project of this type, sometimes you get into things and realize there's more that you need. But we feel pretty confident that the project scope addresses what is needed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think after Hurricane Katrina, the Corps increased their level of safety and looked at everything again and almost increased the level of standards that have to be met. And I think this is, this is appropriate. This is what we want to have done for the best interests of the community, of the citizens,
Indeed.
as well as the investments in the area. Councilman.
Yeah, I just have a question for Doug on the schedule. You said that we're hopeful that it will begin sometime in 2015. Do you know what part of that process is going to begin in 2015? Do we have an idea of where we're starting, what we would be seeing?
Mr. Schmidt, I'll turn and look at Michelle, because I bet she has a great idea.
Councilman Schmidt, Oakland unit is the first unit.
Can you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry. Oakland unit is the first unit that the Corps, and in fact, we have the 65% design drawings at this point. So that will be the first unit.
Okay,
that will
thank you
be
very much.
constructed.
Councilman Hiller.
I have a couple questions, but first, it's just real hard not to just go whoop, whoop, whoop. We have waited so long for this, and it is so critical for other things that we want to do in the city. Getting these levees done will secure us for a long time. It will make a difference for development of the river. Once the Polk Quincy Viaduct comes in, the other big project we're waiting for, it clarifies where everything's going to be for riverfront development and more in downtown. So we thought, we didn't know, and kudos go to council people and leaders and chamber leaders who steadily went to Washington and continue to work with the Corps, both in DC and in Kansas City. It's a big deal to be number 2 in line and to be talking about working on this in 15. I have 2 short questions, and that is back to this map. Are the blue dots where the work is actually going to take place? It's way too small to read anything on them. Question for whoever.
Yes, Councilwoman Hiller. The dots are just indicating actually pump stations associated with the individual levee units.
So they don't mean anything as far as the work?
No, ma'am.
That's coming up. So if anybody wants specifics about the work, they can check with you later. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And second, just so everyone knows, who is responsible for the Soldier Creek waterway and flooding?
Councilwoman Hiller, that is North Topeka Drainage District.
Thank you.
I think they have their elected body responsible for that. It's an interesting concept going through the city, right? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
And I think the other thing to point out is one of the reasons, or maybe the reasons we're number 2 in line, is that we had set aside the money. In each of these, those entities have to. We provide 35% of the cost, and we have not all of it, but a good portion there ready to go. And the Corps liked that and put us up there at the top. So we've been talking about that for years, of having that fund, and is it necessary? And we like to borrow from it sometimes, but now we need it, and it's there. So very important. Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doug, I just want to ask you and possibly Michelle, I know a levee is not at the end of its lifespan, it's not going to deteriorate and the rating's not going to decrease as rapidly as, say, like what's happening with the Willowdale Bridge, but I assume when they do the inspections, they have some kind of rating system. Do you have information on where our levees stand at this time?
Yes. Councilman Brown, we, as Mr. Gerber indicated, the Corps performs periodic inspections, which is once every 5 years, and they also do annual inspections. And we are rated, and it's unacceptable, acceptable, and minimally acceptable are our ratings, so. And
Okay.
that's part of the public law, 8499, that keeps us in check with our
So
sponsorship.
what did you say, where are we rated?
Acceptable at this point.
Okay, thank you.
With individual components that we continually have to maintain, but yes.
Okay, all right.
But our entire system is acceptable at this point?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, other questions? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. Very good, very helpful information.
So officially, no objections. Is that where we are?
Well, I think then, do we come back, or you, no, we don't need it. This
No.
is, we can now proceed with the contract.
Yes, Mayor and Council, yeah, we will just proceed with entering into the agreement.
Okay, all right. Next item, discussion.